Welcome to the Craftsman Online podcast. This is a weekly program focused on the relevant topics in Freemasonry and the various aspects of the craft. Any opinions, thoughts, or viewpoints that will be shared during this program are that of the individual and do not reflect the official position of any Grand Lodge, appendant, or concordant body from which that member may hail. I'm your host, Brother Michael Arce, Editor-in-Chief of CraftsmanOnline.com. And we have quite the list of brothers and guests who are on our podcast for this episode. I think we kind of discussed that we've hit the limit here. So we're going to go ahead and go through this one by one. I want to welcome Right Worshipful Peter Brusso, Brother Kevin Bartels. We have a State Master Counselor, Brian Ramos, Master Counselor of the Knight of Antiquity, Tristan Schalbaum, and Senior Counselor of the Knights of Antiquity, Just Jopet. They're all here because we're here to talk about National DeMolay Month. And this whole episode centered around Tristan reaching out to Craftsman Online at the beginning of the year. Tristan, why don't you tell us what DeMolay means to you and why you wanted to join?
DeMolay to me is like a social outlet, as long as like a learning experience and a way to vent from the stresses of school that I've been dealing with since third grade. I first decided to join DeMolay because back when I was 7, I went to a meeting in Riverhead and I found the ritual really interesting to myself, and I decided that I would eventually join DeMolay a year ago. My father just joined JEPTA recently, and my grandfather and my mother also have Masonic service, like the 5th generation.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, so when you say when you were 6 or 7, it seems like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right? For you?
It feels like forever.
Okay. What grade were you in when you first had an interest in joining DeMolay?
2nd or 3rd grade.
Okay, cool. And what grade are you in now?
8th.
Awesome. So when you talk to other guys your age at school or just friends of yours hanging out, like, how do you describe the DeMolay to them?
That's a tough one. I don't really talk about DeMolay around my friends, but when I do, I have a bunch of the DeMolay in a nutshell pamphlets in my backpack. I pass them one and I talk to them about it a little bit, and then ask them if they're interested or something.
We have a couple other of your DeMolay brothers here. We have Brian and Jopet. So Brian and Jopet, why don't you help us out here a little bit? When you got into DeMolay, what did you expect? And now that you've been in it for a while, how do you share this with other young guys your age that might be interested in it?
I have been going to the Grand Lodge in New York for as long as I can remember. And this is before the age of 12, which you need to be a DeMolay. So basically, I was going with my parents to their Masonic meetings, but of course, I wouldn't be allowed to go into the meetings itself. So I would be, outside with the DeMolay brothers and the Rainbow and the Triangle that were there. And that, I guess you can say that's where it all started, because those are the people that have taken care of me while my parents were in the meeting. And, the bonds that I've created with those young men who are now like senior DeMolays is crazy. And of course, my father and my grandfather, they stem from Masonic backgrounds. So although they were not DeMolay, it was bound for me to, become a DeMolay. Originally going in, I was scared because although I knew the people that were in there, you don't typically know what they do inside of the chapter room. It's all, their business, their stuff, and it's not something that they can go around telling people. So when I originally joined, I was, very timid, very scared, but they're very welcoming. And what I learned from it is DeMolay to me became a place of self-improvement. It became a place where I can network, learn to public speak and learn all these transferable skills that I can take into the outside world, whether that's the work or the job that I eventually do, it's college or school, the time management, all that sort of stuff. And the best thing about it is I got to meet, people like Brother Tristan, Brother Jopet, and Dad Brusso, and Dad Bartels. So that's what DeMolay means to me.
How about you, Brother Jopet? What's it mean to you?
My dad, he brought me into one of the DeMolay meetings because I'm pretty sure I was like 12 at the time, but it was like during the midst of July. So I was like, what was it? I was about to turn 13 at the time. So I was on the verge of joining. But he brought me to one of the DeMolay meetings, and at first I didn't feel that interesting, but the more meetings I was dragged to, not even against my will, it just got better and better. I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll give it a try. And here I am, wound up. But if I ever were to share with the idea of DMLA around my friends, which I don't do very often because Mumari, what's this? The things I hear people say about it, it just makes me feel very uncomfortable speaking about it. But when I do bring it up around my friends, it's like, I put it in very blunt terms. In my eyes, it's like, how do I say this? A group of boys just wanting to have fun. That is the most blunt way I can put it. Plus religious work too, but is what it is.
And I appreciate, you being direct about that, because in Freemasonry, it's very similar in that we can't talk about some of the stuff that we do in Freemasonry when it comes to the ritual or the degree process that we go through, the quote unquote secrets. And then when you tell people, well, I go to this meeting and, twice a month and I hang out with other guys and we're in a lodge room and we dress a certain way and we act a certain way, people look at you and go, and that's fun? What parts of being in the DeMolay, for Brian and Jopet, how would you use the word fun to describe some of the activities that you've done?
I remember a lot of the members wanted to go paintballing. So, we got to go paintballing. And we also have different events. I'll talk about one of them. It's called Winterfest. This is an annual event that we have every year. I guess that's annual. This is an event that we have every year. And, basically the state master counselor, the president of all of New York, is the one that gets to pick the what we do for the event. So for this year, we got to go to an American Ninja lab, which if you're familiar with American Ninja Warrior, they got to do all fun sorts of stuff like that. We got to try new foods. We got to try, meet people from around the state. The fun stuff is basically the brothers from all around the state coming together to do whatever they want to do. It's not something specific. It's just the brotherhood they have with the given event that the master counselor plans out. And we also have a convention, which is another event that we have usually where the state master counselors are, elected and picked. And not only do we have those rituals, we have the fun stuff as well. So whether it's going to Camp Turk and, swimming in the lake, having fun with different sports and activities, it can be anything we want, and that's what makes it special.
It's an interesting organization, and I want to turn to the dads. Brother Kevin and Right Worshipful Brusso are joining us here. You're dealing with quite a diverse age group, young men from 9 to 12 all the way up to 20 years old. How do you structure leadership in young men at that age?
So, Brother Michael, one of the best parts about DeMolay is the youth leadership component to it. And our State Master Counselor, Brother Brian, can tell you that when we sit down and say to the guys, what do you want to do? It's really what they want to do. And the key there is to empower the youth. One of the things we have a lot in society is so much of the life of a young man or a young woman is so structured. You wake up, you go to school, you go to band practice, then you go to lacrosse practice, then you go home, shower, repeat, and you have SAT prep, all this type of stuff. And so when we give the young men a chance to sort of choose their own adventure, if you will, it gives them a lot of opportunities to do that. Brother Ramos mentioned Winterfest. So 2 years ago, we did Winterfest up at Lake George. We did it at a resort. Everyone did the water slides and had a great time. When it came time for Brother Brian to plan his, he was like, well, I don't want to do the water park. I want to do American Ninja, Dave and Buster's, rent out a movie theater. And so I ended up doing that instead. And when the young men are empowered to plan activities, they can go through and they can lead. One of the things that I love as an adult volunteer is being able to sort of take a step back and let the young men lead one another. And through the bonds that we build up in brotherhood, you can see them improving in confidence, improving in skill sets. So as mentioned, Brother Tristan is one of our local master counselors out in Eastern Long Island, out in Suffolk County, and he's taking on those kind of projects. As he moves up the line, he can take on regional planning as one of our region master counselors, and maybe someday state master counselor like Brian's doing. And even DeMolay is unique among our organizations that we actually have an international leader who's the international master counselor who helps to plan and organize a whole bunch of activities along with the Congress secretary. And so it's giving the young men the skill sets to plan and to execute. One of the things that we all struggle with as adults is taking that backseat to really empower the guys to plan the activities and not to try to relive our youth. I was a DeMolay back in the 90s and the early aughts, and I'm always reminded that what we did things back then is not how we do things now, and always giving the young men that opportunity and chance to see. I think one of the most rewarding things to be able to see a young man grow through the organization, and where they go from being a 12-year-old who struggles to do the chapter opening, they can become that 20-year-old leading the state chapter and doing things flawlessly. It's really exciting. Brother Kevin, did you have some thoughts on that?
As an adult advisor, it's easy to try and step in and plan everything yourself, but that's not what the organization is about. It's about letting the youth plan. It's about letting the youth lead and learn these leadership skills and the tools that go with it. So, like as Dad Russo said and Brother Ramos said, planning Winterfest, that's the example. You need to look and see what's open, because if it's in the middle of winter, who knows what's open? So you need to figure out what's open. You need to start planning and sending out the invitations. You need to do all these things, and learning all those tools that I learned when I was in DeMolay, it helps immensely later down the line.
Oh yeah. My son, who I love dearly, 15 years old, and when I asked him to do simple things, it's like almost torture to him. It's like, and being able to complete the thought, and the idea of these young men, just you have Tristan at one level and Brian and Jopet at other levels, and being able to see them take charge and have confidence and public speaking abilities and all of this, you get to see firsthand in the monthly meetings that I'm sure your groups have, but they don't realize if you measured it like year over year at the end of, one school year, like how this is now impacting their school life, their home life. Their parents are probably thrilled that they have, young guys that can sit here and plan to do certain things instead of just give you that one-word answer.
Brother Michael, one of the hardest things is asking guys what they want to eat.
Yeah.
We have an amazing staff in the Masonic care community who provides catering for our convention up at Camp Turk. And the caterer called me up and said, Peter, you have mac and cheese scheduled for 90% of your meals. Was that a mistake? I'm like, no, it wasn't. And no, it wasn't. Well, actually, Brother Tristan, what did we have for dinner at Winterfest?
We had like Brazilian barbecue. We had the Indian food.
No mac and cheese?
There was no mac and cheese this time.
Wow. That's like one of your guys' like 4 food groups. You got mac and cheese, hamburgers, pizza, tacos, right? Those are the 4 things that dudes eat these days?
Brother Michael, we did Texas de Brazil Steakhouse up in Albany, and it was all you can eat steak, and we definitely got our minutes for the young men.
I can imagine. I always feel bad for their parents when they have to pay for it. I can only imagine what it must have been like for the dads that were sitting at the table. And I want to kind of transition to that part, because there is an important role for the dads in the organization of DeMolay. I always found it interesting that you get that honorable title of being dad. Explain a little bit about this, and that, well, these brothers that we have on the podcast tonight have a little bit of a family Masonic history or background, that it's not a necessary requirement to be a Freemason or to have a father or a male family member in the family who is a Mason to join the DeMolay, right?
Right, Brother Michael. So if I had a DeLorean outside and we took you back 103 years to 1919 in Kansas City, you would see a country very much changing with itself. Just emerging from World War I, emerging from the Spanish flu. And a lot of young men did not have role models in their lives. A lot of young men did not have fathers in their lives. And so a young man named Louis Lauer went to the Valley of Kansas City, the Scottish Rite, looking for a job. And his dad had recently died in a hunting accident. And the Mason he met with a gentleman named Frank Land was talking to him. And he realized that Louis Lauer, he needed more than a job. He needed more than money. He needed someone to tell him what it is to be an adult, how to navigate through that. And from that initial conversation between Brother Land and Louis Lauer, the Order of DeMolay was born. And for 103 years, we've been relying upon Master Masons and members of our Masonic family to be those guides and those mentors for our young men. And as they were starting out DeMolay, they didn't want to call Dad Land Mr. Land, because that seemed too formal. They didn't want to call him Frank, that seemed too casual. But they were like, well, we're a brotherhood. If we're all brothers, let's have dad and let's have mom. So we call our male advisors dad and we call our female advisors mom. It's funny. There are past grandmasters that I call dad still, because those were the men who were investing the time and resources, giving me lessons as I was growing up. And so when DeMolay was founded, we were founded upon the ideas of the Masonic fraternity. Our principles, our values, they all come from Masonry. So in the same way that in the lodge might have worshipful master and senior warden and junior warden, we have the master counselor, senior counselor, and junior counselor. And even the way that we balance, so many of the things we have emulated from the Masonic fraternity, and it just is natural that we have men, Masons, contributing that and being a huge positive impact. And we're very proud in New York. We have the International Order of Rainbow for Girls, the Organization of Triangles, and other jurisdictions, Job's Daughters, who also benefit from this great, proud Masonic tradition. And, there's many titles in Freemasonry and all the different bodies. But I think the best is being called dad. Knowing that I'm able to give back to the young men of today the same kind of care, attention, and knowledge that the advisors gave to me 20 years ago when I was an active.
Just 20 years ago.
I always think of myself as the young, hip executive officer. I'm like the second youngest in the country. And I start talking to Brian and Joped and Tristan. I realize, no, I'm ancient.
I want to talk about a part that makes DeMolay kind of special from other youth groups that are out there. And because a lot of Freemasons in New York State listening will understand when we talk about degrees and ritual. And it's been established on our podcast, yes, there are 3 degrees that you go through in your blue or symbolic lodge as a Master Mason. But there's also a degree structure that exists in DeMolay. And I'm sure the young men here will understand we're not going to violate any obligations. No one's going to be giving away any secrets that we shouldn't be talking about. But I did want to kind of talk about the structure of this so that people that are interested in DeMolay potentially joining, they understand that this isn't something that you can just go in and pay whatever the joiner's fee is and then bang, you're instantly into it. But there is a building process that exists through the degree. So what can you guys tell us about that?
Any Master Mason listening to this podcast is welcome to attend any DeMolay meeting. We welcome all members of our Masonic family, our sisters in the Eastern Star and Amaranth. We are all Masonic family, and they are all welcome to come witness the ritual of DeMolay. So in the DeMolay structure, we have 2 degrees. We have the first degree, which is called the initiatory degree, which is very much like Blue Lodge or the York Rite ritual. You receive instruction from the DeMolays, instruct each other in here are 7 cardinal precepts. Without giving out, it's not a secret, but the journey you take represents like the journey of manhood, and you learn about our 7 cardinal virtues: filial love, love of family, reverence for sacred things, courtesy, comradeship, fidelity, cleanness, and patriotism. And it's the young men learning the parts and expressing those parts to the other young men, so they're learning from one another. And it's very much like the Blue Lodge ritual and the York Rite ritual. The second degree is the DeMolay degree, and this is very Scottish Ritish. Oftentimes you can see exactly how it places itself within the Scottish Rite ritual, and it is where you actually get to witness the lessons of fidelity of Jacques DeMolay. Those of your listeners may or may not know, Jacques DeMolay was the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar. We revere him in Masonry as a Masonic hero, but they go through and they help to do that drama. Brother Brian, you participated in both degrees. What were some of your favorite parts of that degree work?
You get to see the new members in front of you, the people that you're about to initiate, and you just, sometimes they're happy, sometimes they're confused. Most of the time they're confused because, these, when they're going along this journey that Dad Bruce is talking about, they're like, it's all new to them, and they're just like, huh, what? And like, although, public speaking is a huge thing, and memorization is a huge thing in DeMolay, and no matter how well they say, their part in this ritual, not everything that is said is going to retain in the head of the new member. So just being able to see them learn and grow from after that point is really cool. And as for the DeMolay degree, the second degree that we have, one of the funnest things would be dressing up for it, because we have these cool costumes for it, because we're, portraying different people, such as Jacques DeMolay, we're portraying guards, and, just being able to be with your brothers, be with your friends, and acting, as a certain role is not something you do every day, especially dressing like that, not something you see every day. So that just puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, and it really gives them an opportunity to sort of express, like, drama and techniques like that. We're very excited. We're actually internationally in Ohio. They're doing a special weekend leadership conference. We're actually focusing on ritual presentations. And so, Brother Michael and my other Masonic brothers listening, we enjoy doing our degree work, and that provides the young men an opportunity to do the same thing. Some of them even do makeup and costume degree work. We have a lot of young men that like drama, and so being able to direct a degree gives them that kind of feeling of drama. It's also a chance to be able to do a play without necessarily having to commit the full time that's required for like a drama club production. We also have a whole bunch of public ceremonies. And again, for any of the brothers listening, we have a ceremony of light, which explains the teachings of the Order of DeMolay. We have a flower talk. Very proud. Brother Tristan is the first young man, I think, in 9 years to win at our regional Maytalk ritual tournament. Brother Tristan, what are some of your thoughts on ritual?
Ritual for me, it's like one of those things where you're good at it and you want to keep going because you're good at it. But as part as that, after you memorize it, it's the impact that you put on the audience after.
It's the difference between being like a robot and being able to repeat the words, but being able to say, hey, I know what this means, and I can tell you the story, even though these aren't my words.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing Brother Michael will tell you is there's a lot of SAT words in the ritual.
Well, I'm sure everybody here will relate to this, but I remember, being a young person, the hardest thing we had to memorize was Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address speech, and having to memorize that at a certain age and like sweating that so bad and like, writing it on your hand with a pen and like it would wear off. And the kind of preparation that goes into here, I'm very interested, like Tristan, when you're studying your ritual to become proficient in it, which is a word that we would use. How does this help you with like other things that you're studying in school where you can read a book and maybe remember that part that you've read so you could talk about it in class?
Ritual helps me out with my long-term memories. So I can remember multiple pages of writing for a long time before going out and doing it and showing people that I put in the effort to get all this information stuck in my head.
And then do you have discussions with your other DeMolay brothers about the meanings of the words? Like, hey, I thought that it meant this, or do you think it could mean that?
At least in my chapter, that's not common.
I think those are steps that'll be waiting for you when you get a little bit further down the road that we enjoy in our lodges as Master Masons. But one of the things I really wanted to express, because this is National DeMolay Month and we're celebrating the wonderful work that's done in March. One of my favorite famous DeMolay members is Walt Disney. And if you've ever gone down to Disney World in Florida, you sit there and you try to find all the little wonderful Masonic, symbols that they tuck into things to kind of celebrate that he was a DeMolay member. What makes being a DeMolay different than being on the basketball team or the football team or any other club or group that you could join at school? I'm going to turn this question to Tristan, Brian, and Joe Pett.
So what makes DeMolay different is that it's not just a short-term thing. You gain bonds with your brothers that last for the longest periods of time. You can meet up with so many of my brothers, such as Brother Joe Pett and Brother Ramos, and that it helps me. It's like a social outlet in a way. And it's not just New York either that I make friends with. Back when I was at Maytalk, I made several friends with brothers in Connecticut, Virginia, Maryland. I've grown bonds with them just like I do with my brothers here, Brother Joe Pett and Brother Ramos. What does DeMolay mean to you that separates it from like a basketball team?
I think one of the coolest things about DeMolay is the age sort of range that we have. We have ages 12 to 21, and that's a big age gap. And one of the things that I say in like every single speech that I give is you can learn anything from anyone, no matter what their age is, where they're from, or who they are. And I mean that because, there were times where I walked into, a room when I had a meeting for DeMolay, and, I started having a conversation with a 12-year-old young man. And we talked about different things. We talked about school. We talked about Pokemon. We talked about a Rubik's Cube. And I got to learn so much from them that you wouldn't typically learn from, another age group. And at the same time, you can have a conversation with someone who's older than you. For example, I'm 20 at the moment. If I have a conversation with someone that's 21, 22, we can have a conversation about, who knows, different books that we've read, different shows that we watch, etc. So you can literally learn anything. And the cool thing also is, like Brother Tristan said, he's made bonds from people all around the country. And it's not just limited to this country. There's brothers all around the world. I have had visitors come from the Philippines that I still talk to, sometimes. I've had, met so many different people on Zoom calls when, Corona was at a very strong point. And that just goes to show that there's so many brothers that you can eventually meet in the future and just learn from about where they're from, what they like to do, etc. And when it comes to comparing us to, different clubs and different, basketball teams and, etc., this is something where you're a DeMolay for the rest of your life, basically, because after you age out, you become a senior DeMolay. But that doesn't mean you're not a DeMolay. You're still a DeMolay, just, not within the age group that, that is current. But you can still, provide, you can still help, as Dad Brusso and, Dad Bartels are still doing. And that's the great thing. You can still have mentors that are giving back because they're the people that have, received from, their dads at the time. And the structure just keeps going on and on for learning. So
when it comes to basketball teams and clubs, not saying like, I'm not like disregarding them in a sense, but like comparing DeMolay and basketball teams and plus clubs, the DeMolay help each other out more often than basketball teams and clubs do when you look at it more deeper and deeper. One person may be struggling and millions of DeMolays will be rushing in to help that one person, most likely. And while the basketball team, one person struggling, 2 or 3 people will probably come in, and that's just about it. Not also that, you also have to think about the fact that clubs and basketball teams or anything of the sort are like short-term compared to the fact that DeMolay is a long-term kind of thing.
No, I appreciate that. You're talking about tangible relationships, and it's interesting to hear, somebody at your level, and then you have the younger members, and you were that younger guy, but now you are the older guy that they come to. So that's the pyramid that exists in the leadership structure. For the dads, I wanted to talk about this as, a parent, and you hear young men speak about leadership and growth and opportunity, and it's kind of a radical idea with young people these days to hear them have these conversations. I had a recent lunch meeting with a friend of mine, a colleague, who shared with me that he was a DeMolay, and he was very excited. He was talking about it like it was just 5 years ago, when it was much longer than when Peter, Brother Peter, was a young person. And he talked about, his chapter up in the Glens Falls area and the organizations that they would do, the dances that they would set up, the fundraising, and how all of that was helpful to where he is now. As a dad himself, who has a daughter who's, getting ready to finish up college, that those principles, those lessons that he learned really have still stayed with him as lifelong skills. And that's one part that, for us older parents, we want to hear that, and we want to feel good about that. And I want to thank Brother Tristan and Brother Joped and Brother Ramos for sharing that insight. For the dads, let's talk about this. This might be the most important question we have of our podcast episode as we wrap things up here. You got brothers, you've got young men, you've got parents, you've got loved ones, family members who are all listening. They're probably asking the same question now. What's required to join the DeMolay? What's the petition process? What's the application process like?
That's a great question. So within DeMolay, we actually have 2 different programs. We have our Squires program for young men ages 9 to 11, and we have our regular DeMolay program ages 12 to 21. We require 3 things. One, that you be a young man between those age groups, that you have a belief in some form of supreme being, and we have many different beliefs within our organization. And 3, that you be a good moral person. And those are the 3 basic requirements. And then if you know of a young man who could benefit from DeMolay or would enjoy the fellowship of DeMolay, they can reach out to us at New York DeMolay at info@nydemolay.org. They can also visit our website on the international level, www.demolay.org, demolay.org, and there's contact information out there. For those of you who are here in New York, feel free to email me, pwbrusso@gmail.com, and we will get you connected with that. We're also very excited. We're adding several new chapters. We had a phone call a couple weeks ago with some men out in Portland that are like, we need DeMolay, our community needs DeMolay. What do we need to get that started? So we're starting them out in Cortland. We're starting them out in Fulton. We have one going up in Slate Valley. And so if there are Masons that are interested in having DeMolay, let us know. And anyone who's interested. We're also an international organization. So if you have relatives who live outside of the great state of New York, well, too bad they can't live here, but we can definitely reach out to other states and get them connected. One of the things that I love about DeMolay is that we are an international brotherhood, and we've had DeMolays join New York who are members down in Virginia or North Carolina, came from the West Coast. Wherever you go in this country, there's a DeMolay chapter, and we're really excited about that. So if you know of a young man, please let us know. I would also offer, if you know of a young woman that can benefit from that, we have our great Rainbow organization, our great Triangle organization, and they reach out to us. We can get them connected there as well. So let us know. We're definitely being interested. Even though it's not a local chapter, we have young men participating in our state events. We just finished up Winterfest. We're working on Sports Weekend now, and this coming summer, we're going to have another great convention. So there's a way to experience DeMolay no matter where you are.
All right, as we get ready to close things out here, I want to turn to, he's always been the center square in our conversation here online, and that's Brother Tristan, who originated all of this. So for you to get credit, for you to be able to do this as part of the National DeMolay Month, what is the motto? What's the phrase that you need to share with everybody about DeMolay? Making young men into great leaders. This has been the Craftsman Online podcast. I want to thank all of my guests for coming on here. We'll start with Right Worshipful Peter Brusso, Brother Kevin Bartels, Brother Tristan Schalbaum, Brother Brian Ramos, and Brother Joe Pett. Brothers, thank you all for being a part of our program tonight. If Masonic education is important to you, you can sign up for our email newsletter. That's at craftsmanonline.com. A reminder, the new episodes of our podcast are available for download every Monday morning. And until next time, let peace and harmony prevail.